2 problems that you saw. For extra credit, tell me if you discovered all 4 problems. The reason why we asked you the last question, the creatives that they use to, we know that there's a problem. This helps narrow down the problem space instead of having to read through all your code and trying to figure out what the problem is. If you still don't understand the error message, the device to see if any of those fix the error. As you do, you can reach out to undo this reset code button, which brings you back to the original code that we gave you. Oftentimes, just talking to another person will help you work out your error. Back to being able to also take a screen. Okay, so here's a chance messages. So I want you to list 2 problems that you saw. For actually all 4 problems. The Okay, so values or longer. For the reason the box practice, because if the text ever changes like this, then it looks so that it fits based on what the text is. You might not know what the text break you called that it's similarly for height. The text view will update so that height or width is because you don't shift up to you don't want the story back out. Let's try a shorter string. Okay, it's time for you to practice now. We want you to change a couple things with the code. Change the width and the height of the text view. Okay, right up under the symbol. If other text view, here I want to display a shorter string. Okay, it's time for you to practice now. Okay, it's time. If you haven't already noticed, the text is kind of tiny on this device screen. I mean, my eyesight is terrible, so I really need it to be a lot bigger. Luckily for us, there is an attribute that we can declare to change the text size. Oh, but wait, there is an error down here. It says the computer wasn't able to understand my XML. Double checking the code, I see this new line that we added is actually appearing in black font, whereas everything above it has blue for the attribute name and red for the attribute value. So there's something wrong with this line. Oh wait, I see it now. / and the closing angle bracket are on this line up here. This is actually a common beginner mistake to add the attribute after the tag has been closed. Technically, this is like hanging out in XML limbo or something because it's not tied to an XML element. What we really you want is to copy these symbols and move them down here. Ah, that's better. So there's no error, and this is valid XML, and then our font is bigger. Woohoo! It's much more readable now. Note how the text size is set to be 45 SP. SP stands for Scale Independent Pixels. It's a unit of measure similar to DP, which makes the app look consistent across different devices of different densities. Now, SP is only used for fonts because it adjusts based on the user's preferences and settings for text size. Let's look at that now. Let me show you where the setting is. Go to the Settings app, and then tap on Display, and then there's an option for font size. If you click on that, you can see the different font sizes. If I click on Huge, then it increases the font size of everything. So always use SP to declare your font sizes so it will scale up or down according to the user's preference. In a moment, you'll change the text size of the text view. However, I first wanted to show you one thing. This is the Material Design spec. Material Design is a new design language developed by Google to help people create consistent and beautiful apps across different devices and platforms, like web and mobile. The design specification, or design spec for short, highlights the best practices for designing your app. It provides guidance on the layout of your app, visual style, imagery, animations, and much more. There's also a section on typography, or fonts. It lists a whole bunch of information here that you can read later, but the most important thing is this guide here that talks about the recommended text sizes. If you're displaying a really big header, you can use some of these text size values. If you're trying to do a title or some body text or a caption, you can use some of these sizes. This will help guide you on what types of values you can pick depending on what your use case is. But be careful, because if you pick too many type sizes or styles in your app, it can be really overwhelming for the user. So just pick a couple of styles to display the information that you want. When you change the text size for the text view, try a couple of these values here. Go ahead and change the text view font size using the Material Design spec. And then if you're up for a challenge, you can try learning about the text appearance attribute from the Google+ Android Dev Pro Tip that I've posted below. If that's better, fonts, because font size. SP to declare your font size as it adjusts based on the user's preference. You're doing awesome. Let's look at one more thing you can change. Be something like white. How about if we change? There's other colors by specifying specifying the exact hex color spec for colors. Copy the code and this, and then the hex color code. Cool. So now the can also change Android, and I can specify in quotations the hex value. So go back to the color guideline, pick a random color. This color will do. Copy that and then paste that here in between the quotes, hashtag and the hex code. And cool. You can find those again in the material design spec for color. So each of these colors is given a name from the material team, like 50, 100, 200. So let's choose this blue here. I can double click to copy it and then go over to the code, and then instead of blue, I'm going to replace this with hashtag and then the hex color. On the blue background. Now it's your turn. Change the color of the background and the text of the text view to 2 different colors from the material design spec. Linked below, as well as the XML visualizer that has your starter code. Have fun! We played around a little bit with text center and center crop. Also try to change the image to something else by checking the available images link. We've included a small version of the cake image as well as a larger version so that you can try the different scale types. Attribute is something we haven't seen before. It says, and now when we write image view here, it displays an image on the screen. The first attribute is something we have /k. The file name and drawable, you don't need to say. If you're wondering where this image is in, so that you can use them to print in a bunch of images compared to the app. But basically we loaded in a bunch XML visualizer. Open Android's have the drawable folder. Now if I try to reference, for example, available, app content is only an attribute center based on the you can see better than the screen. It doesn't change, just centers it and set other values in the image to image. really big, but this doesn't change the size of the image. We say scale type is actually pretty. See the cake, the image view. Scale type, let's see this size. So when we say scale type, it doesn't change the size of the image, it just centers it. So we see that the cake image is actually really big, but this is the center of the cake. Instead, scales down. In this case, the aspect ratio down, so that it fits this view size. When displaying photographs, I like to use center crop. This is because it's typically okay to crop off the edges of the photograph in order to achieve this edge-to-edge look. When images go edge-to-edge without any white border or anything, this is what we call a full bleed image. We use a lot of full bleed images in the material design guide. Here are some examples. You see how the images go edge to edge here, and it gives it a nice immersive feel. Okay, now it's time for you to try. Specifically, we would love for you to be able to change the height and width. Specifically, nice we call a full. When images go edge to edge without any we use a lot of full bleed images in the material design guide. Here are some examples. You see how the images go edge to edge, immersive. Specifically, we would love for you to be able to change the height and width of the image view to be a try. Now it's time for here, and it gives it a nice immersive. You see how the images go edge to edge here, and it gives it a nice immersive feel. Okay, now it's time for you to try. Specifically, we would love for you to be able to change the height and width of the image view to be a fixed dp value. Try something like 100 dp. Then change the scale type between center and center crop. And you can also adjust the height and width of the image accordingly. For example, what happens if you change the height and width of the image view to be greater than the size of the device? Or what happens if you set the height and width to be something smaller than the size of the device? In those cases, you may see different behavior for center and center crop. Also try to change the image to something else by checking the available images link. We've included a small version of the cake image as well as a larger version so that you can try the different scale types. We also included an
So Catherine, we've been working on this course for a while.
I know, Kunal, and it's about So we've been making a guest list so far for the party.
Wait, This is the guest list for the birthday party, right, Catherine?
Yeah.
I really hope I'm on this list.
Well, we'll have to see about that.
Wow. I feel really small about that.
Well, speaking about small, let's talk about the size of views on a screen.
Oh, we've used the fixed width and height, which is the DP, right?
Yeah, for width and height.
Right.
And we could also set wrap content for
Right,
the
which is
view.
a strange way of saying that the view is going to wrap itself around the content. So the content grows large, the view grows large. The content grows small, the view grows small.
Yeah, and there's actually a third one, which is called match parent.
Seems a little strange. That sounds like a dating website for single parents.
Not quite. Match parent means that the view will be as wide or as tall as the parent.
Oh, so that makes sense. I am a view. I have a parent, and my width and height is going to be the same as my parent. Okay.
Exactly. So to summarize, the different values that you can set for a size of a view is with fixed on the child DP. If the content inside each view, width of each view really varies based on what's in some of the content, because the size of the text view is dependent on the content in the code in the instructor notes below. In this case, the linear layout is the root view of this layout because it's the first and outermost view. If we set match parent for the width and height of this root view, I can show you by setting the background of this linear layout to be a non-transparent color. If I set a gray background color on this linear layout, then you can see how the gray extends the full width and height of the device. Now what happens if I try to change the width or height of these text views to be match parent? To make it clearer where the bounds of each view are, I'm going to set a background color on each of the views. Now I'm going to change the height of this text view to be match parent. By the way, you spell it match_parent. And now you see that this text view takes up the full height of the parent. Unfortunately, it pushes everything else off the screen, so we don't really want that. So let's change it back to wrap content. Okay, so let's change the width now to be match parent and see what it does. Now the width of the text view is as wide as the parent, which in turn is as wide as the device screen. If I change the other text views to also be match parent, you can see that it also starts to take up the full width of the parent. I also want to point out one more thing. Every time you see an attribute that starts with layout underscore, like layout height or layout width, these are actually In the previous video, I showed you what happens when you set match parent for the width of each of these child views. The text view and In the previous video, I showed you what happens when you set match parent for the width of each of these child views. The text view ends up extending across the full width of the parent. There's no right or wrong solutions for how you experimented with the code. Here's another thing you could have tried. If you set the linear layout to have an orientation of horizontal, then the views will be displayed in a horizontal row. If you set match parent for the width of the VIP list, then it unfortunately knocks off the other views off the screen. If you set match parent for the height of the text view, then you see that the VIP list text view is now the full height of the parent linear layout. The same can be done for the other children views, or you can set a fixed height. In the previous video, we showed you what happens when you set match parent for the width of each of these child text views. The text view extends to the full width of the parent linear layout. If you set a fixed height on the text view, like 300 dp, then this is what it will look like on the device. There's no right or wrong answers for what you tried out. So to build out this layout, I like to first think about it conceptually to make sure I have an idea of what I'm going to do before I start coding. First, we notice that it's a vertical linear layout because the items are in a vertical column. We have three children views. We have an image view, a text view, and a text view. The first hint that I gave you was to first determine the width of each view. Since the whole layout takes up the full width so to build out this layout, I like to first think about it conceptually to make sure I have an idea of what I'm going to do before I start coding because I have an image view. Hint that I gave you was to first determine the width of each view. Since the whole layout takes up the full width and height of the device, this vertical linear layout has a width and height of match parent. So let's fix. That's better. Now it will eventually select height to be 0 dp and the weight to be 1. And that's until the weight value. And the reason we set the height to be 0 dp is because it's a vertical linear layout to this of 1. Since none of the other children have weight values, then any available space in the parent will be given to this image view. Screen size of the device. We use weights to accomplish this. We set the height of the image view to start at 0 dp, but we give it a weight of 1. Since none of the other children have weight values, then any available space in the parent weight value of the image depends to change the wrap view. Same for the so we want the device a text on the space and that's better. So we need to change that. The width should be match parent. That's better. So now the greenish bluish across the whole which is correct. The width and width of the child value. Then we set the height to be 0 dp and the weight to be 1. And that's to change the weight values to be 10. That's because the weight, so it doesn't really low weight in the field. So let's just change this to be 1. Okay, good job. So far we've learned that a linear layout can have a vertical orientation or horizontal orientation. We also learned that individual views can have weight values to fill up the extra space. Okay, we gave you a link to the XML video of Natalie in the right place. She should be located to the right of Ben, which the is aligned to the parent edge. She's text_view. There's no plus symbol because the Ben text view ID was already created up here. Next, let's position Natalie. She should be located above Lila and along the left edge of the parent. Here's the Natalie text view. It's located by default on the top left corner of the parent. Let's above the ID for. Cool, and now it's in the right place. This is the original XML that we provided you. It was a vertical linear layout, position the image and the first text view. Below, we have the text view and then reference text view. It doesn't hurt to add ID for the location text view as well. I also added an ID for the distance text view. Even though we're not referencing it anywhere, it doesn't hurt to add an ID to a view. In the case that you do need to refer to it later, it's already there. Lastly, we have the text view that shows the distance, 10 miles away. It's positioned to the right of the image and below the California text view. Thus, we had to add the attribute layout to right of and reference the photo, and we also had to add an attribute for layout below and then reference the location text view. This involved adding that we do need to refer to it later, it's already there. To build the desired layout, the image actually goes edge to edge. So let's get rid of this padding that we have on the parent view. Cool, now the image goes edge to edge. Let's fix the text down here. We mentioned that we want 16 dips of padding all around the edges here. Okay, well I tried to add 16 dips of padding to this text view, but we originally wanted only 8 dips of padding here. So we should break this out into individual values and set the bottom padding to be 8 dips. Okay, now we have top, left, and right padding equal to 16 dips, but the bottom padding of this text view is 8 dips. Cool, so now this last text view should also get 16 dips of padding. But wait, now that increases the amount of space in between the two text views. Let's also add 16 dips of padding to this last text view. This makes the left and bottom and right spacing correct, but now there's too much space in between the two text views. So let's break this out into individual values. And we'll stop right there because we don't want any top padding on this view. The correct spacing is coming from the bottom padding of this text view above it. Cool, so that looks correct. The only thing that's missing now is the fact that we need to get rid of this white space here. We don't need a bottom margin on this image view, so let's delete it. Great work! We finished building this layout.